I've been doing these chanting for abundance, and it has been super powerful, Jay. I have
Yeah, I
to tell
bet.
you, it's like it like opens up the hose, and it's like, shh. Um, and so you watch what you wish for, because you
Yes,
might get it,
yes.
and you get it in kind of weird ways sometimes too. So
Yeah.
be mindful what you watch for. But yeah, I think pleasure on the other side of that question is pleasure is really interesting too, because it can be one of those really immense or just an interesting thing to lean into, especially if we're suffering, if we're depressed, if we're going through a cycle of grief. It's like, how willing am I to turn back towards my joy and find joy in my life? And as I'm sure you know, when we're grieving and suffering, like that's probably
Hmm.
the last thing we want to do,
Mm,
but it's so important to do it.
I
To
agree.
find joy in the food we eat, in the sunshine, in being outdoors.
Hmm.
So it's also the sexual pleasure piece for sure too, but um, is really stepping into, well, what brings me that sense of joy and pleasure in my life, and that in our often more religious ways of orienting around spirituality, we've kind of like repressed that pleasure component, at least in Western cultures, most Western cultures. But it's interesting to see how it's really expressed in Vedic astrology.
Mm. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I asked that question is because I really do see that. I think there's a resistance and a lack of belief around deserving pleasure and also what pleasure means. Like, yes, I am talking about intimacy and ecstasy and feeling that erotic pleasure, but also the pleasure in those things you mentioned. Enjoying your body, not just in intimacy, but enjoying your body in other ways, enjoying your food, enjoying your life, enjoy, and to me that is pleasure. It's also being open to receiving.
Mm.
And that I think is such a beautiful thing, but I also think it's our birthright, and I don't think that we're dialed into that as much enough, and that is something that I really want to make a change in, and I have in my own life, but in for all of us, is there is so much more pleasure and joy available to us, and actually reflecting back, it's like that's what grief and death is has taught me, is like we have, whether we have more lives or not, which I believe, but I can't prove, but we have one body right now, and we were given this one lifetime. And to me, like, the ultimate responsibility and choice is to have a really fucking great one and to enjoy as much as we possibly can, because there is so much challenge and grief and tragedy and all of these things. But so it's up to us to choose pleasure and to find the joy as much as we can. It won't be there all of the time, but when we can, to create that and to lean into it and to be that for each other as well.